But thankfully, Sir Steve Webb is going to guide me through all of this, former pensions minister and a former Lib Dem MP as well. And this is about the winter fuel cut backlash and essentially whether there will be a big rebellion against the Labour Party, who, I mean, when you think about it, there were 7 people who voted against the government when it came to the cap on the two-child benefits, and Sir Keir Starmer booted them out. Well, a lot of people in the Labour Party don't think that cutting winter fuel credits for pensioners is the right way forward, and is this going to be tested in Parliament in a way that Sir Keir Starmer, if he's going to maintain the mantle of being Mr Tough, might end up having to reduce the size, the number on his benches, not that he can't afford to, frankly, by quite a few more. Let's speak to Sir Steve Webb now. Hi, Steve. I mean, this has been an astonishingly unpopular policy, and other people, Martin Lewis, Mr money-saving expert, who apparently is going to go for a meeting with Rachel Reeves some point in the future, I think, if he hasn't done it already, has said that, look, he thinks that means testing this makes sense. If you've got a multi-millionaire pensioner, then it seems mad that you're going to have this extra cash given to you to pay your fuel bills. But the way that the Labour Party have gone about this is cruel.
Yes, I think it's one thing to say the wealthiest pensioners perhaps don't need £200 or £300 a year to help with their fuel bills. That must be true. But to go from that to say that virtually nobody, only the very, very poorest, about 10% or so, will get it, is a big leap. And what Martin Lewis has said is, well, are there better ways of doing this? And he said, well, what about we look at the value of people's homes? In the past, council tax band A to D has been used as a way of paying cost of living payments. And what we've found is that if you did that, actually you would protect most of the most vulnerable pensioners. So you wouldn't raise as much money for the government, but you would protect more pensioners if you did that.
I mean, what's mad here is some of the excuses that the Labour Party have made and turn around going, we're going to get rid of all of this, and actually we're going to do it via a neat and tidy little 243 question form for poor pensioners to fill out. Exactly the sort of people who can't sit there filling out 243 questions into every single nook and cranny of their financial affairs. And Lucy Powell's turned around and said, oh, well, we needed to push this through quickly because we were worried there was going to be a run on the pound because there'd have had to be emergency spending cuts. She's talking utter rot, isn't she?
So the reason it was done in July rather than as part of the budget was to save money this year. So I think Rachel Reeves would really rather not have done it in July, because it did obviously then single out pensioners and, as you say, has created huge resentment. Hard to believe 1.4 billion, which is what it raised, is the financial markets care either way. I suppose you could argue it's symbolic that they're going to do some tough stuff, but I didn't get any sense that on the 28th of July the markets were teetering on the brink and they all calmed down on the 30th of July after the announcement. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge amount of money, and I suspect there'll be a lot more pain to come in end of October in the budget.
Now, we saw the way that Sir Keir Starmer dealt with rebels within the first week in office, basically, when it came to cutting, keeping the cap, the two-child cap on child support. 7 people rebelled against him, and he said, no, that's it. You know, I don't care how many people I got on the benches. You don't vote with me, you're gone. We're removing the whip. Do you think that's going to put him in a spot of bother when it comes to this particular policy?
I think it's pretty clear. If you imagine you were a Labour MP, maybe didn't even expect to get elected, you gain your seat off the Conservatives, you've got that kind of honeymoon period for a few weeks, and then suddenly you've got all your angry pensioners emailing you saying, I didn't vote for this, I never thought you did that, I'll never vote for you again. The party is going to be getting an awful lot of pressure at Westminster to back down. And I think Rachel Reeves will have the challenge that if she backs down on the first major announcement that she makes, then it will just make it harder to get everything else through. So my assumption is they'll play it hard, they'll play it tough. Only a small number of Labour MPs have put their head above the parapet on this. Most of this is going on privately. So there's only about 10 or so have signed a motion against it. So I suspect they'll dragoon everyone through. They may take the whip for 6 months away from a few, as they did with the other measure, but I think they will force it through. because they will just feel that there's so much other tough stuff to do. If they give in here, they'll get nothing done.
Now, the way that this has been framed, this whole debate publicly, is the idea that they're happy to sign off massive inflation-busting pay rises for their mates in the unions. So they would argue that actually that is a deserved increase and needed for maintaining a good quality infrastructure in this country. And that they're more than happy to send loads of money abroad in climate change reparations and the like. And yet they would happily rob pensioners who've contributed to the system all their lives in order to fund some of these things. Now, you and I both know nothing is ever as simple as such a snappy little headline that one department doesn't exactly put its hand into the back pocket of another and there you go, problem solved. But the optics of it aren't great. But what happens when every time we have this debate is the concept of pensioners ends up either being on one side, where there's a load of people, in a quarter of them in houses worth £1 million, they're not as poor as you think they are, they had it really good, and, you know, the Tories just pandered to them because they voted for the Tories. Then on the other hand, poor pensioners are going to freeze to death. Mrs Miggins isn't going to be able to fill out the 243 question survey to see if she's entitled to winter fuel allowance because her fingers are going to be frozen to the bone. As a former pensions minister, what is the landscape when it comes to the pensioners in this country?
I think that when you think about 12 million people, inevitably they're going to be very diverse, aren't they? So any cliche about, you know, the elderly frail pensioner with a one-bar fire freezing as against the, you know, the millionaire living in a mansion, you know, of course both of those happen. I think the challenge of the winter fuel payment thing is what you might call the nearly poor. So it's not so much the people who are on benefit or could be on benefit, it's the people who are just a few pounds above, and they're the ones who've contacted me who are the most angry, because they say, well, I've got a few pounds extra through my own hard work and saving, and I am deprived now of, and then there's a whole shopping list of things you don't get if you're just a few pounds above benefit. And I think that's the group who are probably the most angry, and probably justifiably in this case, you know, because it's not just winter fuel. You lose help with your NHS costs, you lose help with other fuel bill support, with your water rates, you know, a whole set of things you get if you're on pension credit. All I would say is, you know, you mentioned the 243 questions. Happily, you don't have to fill in that paper form. You can phone up, you can phone a free phone number, they'll do all the sums for you. And I would encourage people, you know, if money is tight and they're over pension age, to make that call. It's a free phone number. Yes, you have to tell them your income, you have to tell them what you've got in the bank, but it could all be worth it, could be worth thousands of pounds.
So Steve Webb, former pensions minister, thank you ever so much.